Hello all and welcome to session 42 on the topic income from other sources. Now in this particular session, we are going to learn about the various kinds of securities and what are the rules for grossing up of interest on securities, including the meaning of interest on securities. Now, what do you mean by interest on securities? It simply refers to the interest paid by the company or any other institution to the lender or buyer of securities for the amount provided through purchase of securities. If I am investing in a company, say I am subscribing to the debentures of the company. So company's obligation to pay interest to me. So for me, interest on such debentures will be treated as interest on securities. So when I'm subscribing to debentures, it is like I am giving a loan to the company. So when I'm giving a loan to the company by subscribing debentures, company is supposed to pay interest. I am the buyer of securities. I am buying, I am providing a loan. So the company is going to pay interest. Such interest is called as interest on securities. And this interest includes interest on bonds or debentures or securities. Now, there is always a confusion. What's the difference between a bond or a debenture? Bond and a debenture. In simple, I can say bonds are usually issued by the government, whereas debentures are usually issued by a company. The terms of issue of bonds and debentures are more or less same. So it includes interest on bonds or debentures or securities issued by different organizations. Then there are four basic kinds of securities. Interest on government securities, that is central issued by central government or issued by state government. Then we have interest on securities or bonds issued by local authorities, say the local government, say city corporation or the municipality for that matter. Then we have interest on securities or bonds or debentures issued by statutory corporations. So statutory corporations may issue securities or bonds or debentures and raise funds. And the fourth category is interest on debentures issued by any company. That is, it can be an Indian company or it can be a foreign company. So these are the four kinds of securities we have. Interest on government securities, that is central and state government securities. Interest of securities bonds issued by local authority. Interest securities bonds or debentures issued by statutory corporation. And interest on debentures issued by any company, whether an Indian company or a foreign company. Now, further classification of types of securities. We classify it into two. We say government securities. In government securities, we have tax-free and less tax government securities. We have tax-free government securities and less tax government securities. Then we have commercial securities. And in commercial securities, again, we have tax-free commercial security and we have less tax commercial securities. Overall, when we look at it, we see there are two types of securities under the head government security and two types of securities issued under the head commercial securities. So overall, we have four. We have tax-free government securities. We have less tax government securities. We have tax-free commercial securities. And then we have less tax commercial securities. So let's understand each of these securities now. A tax-free government security means securities issued by central and state government, interest on which is totally exempt from tax, and it is exempt from tax under section 10 subsection 15. We will be discussing about it. In case of less tax government securities, there is no deduction of TDS. There is no deduction of tax at source, no TDS. Hence, interest is taxable, entire amount of interest is taxable in the hands of the investor. There is no TDS at all. So we say grossing up is not needed. Then we have tax-free commercial securities. Now, these are securities issued by non-government bodies. Non-government bodies. Now, these are taken as tax-free in the hands of the security holders. So these are usually taken as tax-free in the hands of the security holders because there is a TDS. The non-government body before issuing are going to deduct tax at source. That's why interest received must always be grossed up. How do we do the grossing up of interest? That's coming up in the next session. We'll be discussing it there. So interest received must always be grossed up for the tax paid by the company. So grossing up is a must. Then we have less tax commercial securities. These are securities where TDS is done. Tax is deducted at source from the interest due to the security holder. So here, if the amount of interest is given, suppose in the problem, interest on less tax commercial security is given, grossing up becomes a must because TDS is deducted. So the TDS amount must be added up. So grossing up is a must. But if you are given with the rate of interest and the investment amount, you can directly calculate the percentage of interest on that investment amount and arrive at interest on commercial securities. So if the rate of interest is given, grossing up is not required because you are going to calculate interest on the investment amount. But for this, if the amount of interest is given, then grossing up becomes compulsory. So those are about the rules as far as grossing up. Let's understand in short. As far as interest on tax-free central government securities is concerned, it is fully exempt from tax, as I mentioned, under Section 10, subsection 15. Then interest on less tax government securities is fully taxable. There is no TDS, so no grossing up is required as far as less tax government securities is concerned. Next, we talk about tax-free state government and tax-free commercial securities. It should always be grossed up because there will be TDS, so grossing up becomes compulsory. Then interest on less tax commercial securities should always be grossed up when the interest amount is given, because when interest amount is given, it is always subject to TDS. But if you are given with the rate of interest, then grossing up of the interest is not required because you are going to calculate interest on that investment amount and arrive at the total interest, that is before TDS. So if the rate of interest is given, grossing up of interest on tax-free commercial securities is less tax commercial securities is not required. So that's all in this session. Thank you.